What's good, everyone? Welcome to the Flywheel podcast. We have episode number 2, and wow, what an episode that was. We had an up-and-coming threader, Haym Salomon, come on and just give his vision of Frax. And I think my favorite takeaway from it was how Frax can become the gold standard of DeFi. Kiet, what was your thoughts on the episode?
Dude, man, this Chad is definitely a gigabrain. Honestly, I feel like there were moments in the pod where you and I just kind of had sat there with our jaws open and just just soaking it in.
Honestly, he's like I'd call him like the ultimate BridgeFi character. Like he worked in like the trenches of not like TradFi on Wall Street, but like big Fortune 500 companies doing finances in that arena. And like when he said like when he went to DeFi, it's like, oh my God, this world is so much better, so much more efficient, so much more transparent. And he's able to bring his insight from his previous work and bring it, how he on chain and how he operates and goes about on chain and how he analyzes activities on chain. It's just a fascinating episode, and I could see him in the future, maybe becoming maybe running something in what I call BridgeFi in between Frax and the real world. I feel like he would be the perfect person to do it.
Yeah. I agree. I really like the term that you use, BridgeFi, too. When you dropped in the pod, I was like, oh, that's clean. But I feel like he has a CS background, so he gets the technicals. But then he worked at one of the largest CPG companies, and he ran the FP&A department. That means there's literally no bullshit because it's budgeting and operationalizing that budget. And I think he's going to bring that rigor and that strictness into DeFi and really kind of
into Frax,
exactly, and into Frax, hopefully, for him to channel that. And I think he'll be a really strong driving force for Frax or any DeFi protocol that would be so blessed to have him on their side.
Yeah. I have an old friend, a businessman, and he had a saying: "People lie, numbers don't."
Yep.
And people lie, numbers don't. That's what it all comes down to. And what Haym did so well is he's able to figure out what are the right numbers, and then what is the proper story to tell, and then combine the two together to create this narrative about or soon to create this narrative why Frax is the gold standard and why eventually the real world, the JP Morgans and everyone else of that caliber of the world is going to come knocking on Frax's door to be like, hey, can we have some capital? Can we come in that sweet liquidity? And so
and honestly, what I really like about his approach is he doesn't just silo off into Frax only. He actually looks at the DeFi ecosystem as a whole, and he sees all these missing links where Frax can come in and kind of plug it all up and kind of connect everything and be that integral, like you said, the gold standard for everything to run on. That's what makes me really bullish.
Yeah. You know what, we've been simping for, a few minutes here. Let's just, give it to the viewers. Let's, have them listen to the whole episode. So, really excited for this one. It's Flywheel podcast, subscribe. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers. So, we can be verified on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter at Flywheelpod, Telegram, where we have, unique bits of alpha that we're going to leak there, at Flywheelpod. Subscribe to that channel. And, let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Flywheel podcast. This is episode number 2. And wow, I'm really excited for this episode today because I caught this threader only a week ago and I just saw him going ham, no pun intended, on on some threads about Frax and DeFi in general. And honestly, I just reached out to him and I got to know him a bit, computer science grad turned, managing the finances of a top CPG company, and then just turned to DeFi, which has been a really interesting road, and we're going to get into all that. But I'd like to introduce Haym Salomon to the podcast. Haym, how are you doing today?
Man, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for reaching out, and very excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So let's get into it. So can you give a little bit of your background for yourself? I did a short overview, but how'd you end up in this little part of the internet?
For sure. Yeah. So I studied computer science, graduated in 2013. So that makes me the oldest guy in this industry. But
don't worry, we're boomers too.
Yeah, boomers. This is a
boomer stick together.
Zone.
Yeah. It's a safe space.
But yeah, I graduated in 2013 and took a job at a CPG company. My first job was in technology innovation, which, like, spoiler alert, turns out is not a real thing. Turns out is just what executives create so that, like, when they screw up on their KPIs, they have something fancy to show their bosses. And I made a lot of things light up and things send messages to each other that didn't really matter. So I gravitated my time and my energy towards kind of the finance work I was doing, and eventually was noticed, and they kind of snapped me up and put me in a cash flow manager job. So was the manager for cash flow for North America. It was about $20 billion a year, and like that's really kind of where I learned finance. Had another role there, was the director of FP&A, or just like financial planning. And again, that's where I learned finance. And then in 2018, I had to step away, took care of some family stuff, and was just paying attention, looking for something cool to do. And then I write about this a lot. I heard one podcast from Hayden Adams on Uniswap, and I realized like the world is changing and I need to be there. So found crypto, found Ethereum, found DeFi, lost a lot of money, started writing threads, and here we are.
Awesome, awesome. So, and you found Ethereum, you found DeFi, but how did you find Frax? Like Frax is a very particular corner of DeFi.
Yeah, you must have really dug deep.
Yeah, man. I mean, like, look, like, I'll just give you like the quick answer. Like, I found Frax because like Frax is like the gravity center of DeFi right now, right? And like, there's a lot of energy and a lot of talk about Curve and Convex, and like, I'm not trying to take anything away from the incredible things that are happening there, but like, you have to understand that Frax is just as important, and part of the Curve Wars story. And so if you understand the Curve Wars, and if you understand why that's critical to DeFi, like you have to be here with Frax.
So, what would you say your frame from like your experience where you were working previously, managing finances and cash flows and this and that? What's your framework of viewing DeFi, and specifically, what is it viewing the curve wars and Frax's place within it?
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell from Twitter, like if you let me go on my thoughts on TradFi, I'll go on. I'll kind of save thoughts unless for specific things you want to talk about. But in regards to what's happening with the curve wars, like, first of all, we just need to drop the name the curve wars. Like, please, like, Sam, anyone with influence, come up with a better name, and I will like use it and force everyone else to use it. Because like, really what's happening is like curve is the first place that we were able to like pool like truly deep liquidity. And like, Uniswap is great and has more TVL, but it's fractured across like a billion different tokens. And Curve is the first place where value is like settling in a deep way. And then like, we can talk about the tokenomics and the history and the convex and blah blah blah. But like, where we are today is there's this like kind of bribing thing. Frax sends a ton of money towards it. When Terra was around, it seemed like a super promising long-term APR thing, and now everyone's running around talking about how the world's changing, and like, stop all that, right? The way we need to understand this is that like, up until today, governance tokens just like had value. And like, if you had greater than 151%, it had the entire value of the protocol. And if you had like some shrimp share, you had nothing, right? And there's so much decentralization theater, there's so much voting, it's all like, it doesn't mean anything. What bribing is like a mechanism for the free market to like credibly price the value of governance. So like, it started with Curve, it started with VECRV, and like, that has the governance power that has like financial implications. And what bribing is the market on a let's say for Vodium on a 2-week basis, like regularly addressing the value of that. And when there's like two massive players like Terra and Frax battling it out, the value of that is a lot higher. Like, I'll just be real to you guys. When one of the like Goliaths falls and there's only like one man standing, that value goes down. but like we're in crypto. We need to like be okay with boom and bust cycles. Like that doesn't mean that like there's not something here. Like if you pay attention to the tech and you pay attention to like the theory, like this is the future.
Wow.
Kiet, what
Okay.
do you think?
Okay. And he's right. If you let him go, he just goes, huh? So, I mean, but that was awesome. You pretty much, I've never heard someone so succinctly put and describe the bribe market of like the marketing pricing of governance. So, I mean, let's take a step back, right? Like Frax itself is, the core product is a stable coin, but Frax is also building a ton of other products on top of just a stable coin. Now, how do you see all of that product suite kind of fit into this core product of the stable coin?
Yeah, I mean, like I think the most valid criticism of crypto today is that like no matter how like cool the tech we're creating and no matter how cool the story we're telling, like at the end of the day, it's like 6 of us guys who put in our money trading it around each other and creating like these huge paper gains that don't actually mean anything, right? And like that is both true in the context of like crypto and the real world, but it's also true within the context of crypto itself, right? And so like you can just create a stable coin and like offer it out there and people can have it. And like that doesn't really mean anything, like what it means to be a stable coin is for like people to like regularly choose to hold it, not because like they want to stockpile it, like I don't really care about that, but because like they need to use it as a medium of exchange. And so like Frax at its core, like what it needs to be is like the best stable coin that uses the best like combination of technology and theory to stay stable and stay liquid and all that stuff. But like in order to like take a stable or sorry, and let me say that again. In order to take a stable coin and turn it into like the internet equivalent of a dollar, like we have to create use cases for it. And so like what when I see the derivative products that Frax is putting out, whether that's Frax Lend, Frax Swap, and like the 10,000 other things, like I'm here to kind of try to get alpha from you guys about what's coming out. Like what I see is like Frax saying like these are real use cases in which you can use Frax. And like not only are we like creating them and they work, like we're putting our money where our mouth is and putting our capital into them to show you that like they're trustworthy, they're robust, and like we believe it's the best way to use the best way to do it.
Yeah, I think what Frax is ultimately trying to do is capture the I like to call it the monetary stack with LLC. So liquidity, lending, and currency. Liquidity as in Frax Swap, lending as in Frax Lend, currency as in Frax. And like once that's all out, then that's the foundation for Frax to do what it does best and just kind of just take a large market share of just whether it's like loans or whether it's trading volume, just by offering like the best fees or lowest, lending rates and this and that. I wanted to actually go back to the curve wars for a sec because earlier this week we had another ham, 0x hams, a tale of 2 hams here.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Have a long thread about he actually disagrees with Frax's strategy in the curve wars right now, and he actually would like to see Frax Lend become more a priority. So I would like to get your thoughts on like what do you think of, like what did you think of that thread, and like what is your responses to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, like what I will say, like before I actually address the thread, is that like Haym's. Wait, what am I again? What is his name again?
You're Ham.
Hams.
He's Hams. Hams.
Okay, Hams. All
The
right.
tale of 2 hams.
Yeah, jeez. All right. Like Hams is more legit than I am. Like at least in terms of like what we're putting out there on Twitter. Like he's doing like real analysis, like without commenting on like how like accurate or good it is. Like I haven't checked, but like what he's putting out there is like real proposals, and like that needs to be like addressed on its own terms. Like at a high level, like what I'll say is that like I just disagree with like the overall analysis. Like number one, like I hear the thought that like the economics of bribing don't make sense in the current environment, and like a lot of things don't make sense in the current environment, right? But like that doesn't mean like buying a house doesn't make sense in the current environment, but that doesn't mean it makes sense to go burn yours down right now, right? Like we were building that for a reason, and I don't understand the I don't think that we should let like the current volatility and the current like problems in the real world affect the things that we're building in crypto. That being said, like he's got some arguments on the cash flows of Curve, and like again, like it's a real proposal. Like he put a real proposal out there, and like that needs to be addressed on its own terms. Um, but I disagree with the analysis on the curve wars, and I also disagree with the strategy of like shifting to lending, and specifically like real world lending. And happy to continue on with that, but I don't know if we want to talk about the curve
Yeah,
wars.
actually, I would like to continue on with the real
Okay.
world lending. Like, what do you see the problem is? Like focusing on it now, it's definitely become a big topic of discussion, as especially now people are like, where can we have our like sweet organic USDA 100% grass free yield from? And people think it's
Yeah. All right. Well, if
yeah,
you'll indulge me for a minute, let me just talk about the real world, right?
yeah.
We've got land war in Europe, right? We've got growing civil unrest in the USA. We've got a perception of runaway inflation in all Western economies. We've got like an attempted transformation of the Chinese economy from this like unsustainable hyper growth into whatever they're trying to do, right? Let alone the waves of COVID disruption that are still happening in China in a way that like us in the West like can't comprehend. There's like food, fuel, fertilizer, like whatever shortages that existed before the war and have been exacerbated by it. And like there's just a general sense that like everything's spiraling out of control. Now, let me like given that context, like let me ask you, like, do you think it's reasonable to go look out in the real world and like trust or to ask a corporation or a billionaire to trust 8 kids that are like hacking around in like the coolest protocol on earth, but with $1 billion? Like, I think that like that is not a like reflection of reality right now. Yeah. No, I mean, like, because the point that I really want to make is that like we want to conquer DeFi, and that's where like Sam and the engineering talent should be, and the business talent should be, and then like what should be going on is that like we should be forming Frax into like an operation that is like a real business that has like KPIs, that has deliverables, that has like that exists outside of like
Yeah, but don't you think real world assets and loans is part of Frax's kind of growing up and,
Well,
and,
here's
and
the point that I
maturing?
really want to make, which I made to Dave at lunch the other day, which is like, they're like, you guys are changing the world and you're conquering DeFi. Like, the second that like traditional money is ready to like move into this space and take it from like this like internet thing into like the way that the economy works, like they're coming to Frax. Like, where else are they going to go? Like I wouldn't worry about like institutional money being like coming to you. I think like the goal today should be to get ready for it and to like create the most compelling business and the most compelling argument and like the most compelling operation. Like it needs an operation. Like investors need to know that they can count on you to give them like accurate information every month. And like that they need to know that like if Sam gets into a car accident, like this whole thing's not fucked.
I'm sorry, I just want to keep on addressing this thing because real world assets in my mind is a really great next step
Mm-hmm.
to really making Frax truly mature and operationalize it and
Mm-hmm.
have some real world use cases where institutional investors would be like, yes, that makes sense. You're
Mm-hmm.
lending to party A from party B's savings. Yes, makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that's why real world assets is a proper next move rather than just keep on playing this DeFi circle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like the wrong idea to like want to put Frax into the real world. Like, of course, man, like I can talk to you about like many protocols that are like doing that today. And like, just to keep this close to home, like Maple Finance is doing that. And like, they're doing amazing things. And like, we should all be proud of them. Like that really is the Lord's work today. Right.
Yeah.
But um, I, I just don't understand why, like, I think that like when I was first like really like digging into Frax, like something that I kept hearing Sam say over and over and over again that like I couldn't really wrap my head around was like all of Frax's liquidity is on chain, right? Like everything that Frax does is on chain,
Yeah.
right? Like, and like that's what's special about what we're doing is that it's crypto native. And think that like,
Hmm.
I think that like trying to bridge the gap directly from Frax to meat space, like, and I use that in a derogatory way, is like chasing after money without recognizing like who you are, if that makes sense.
So
Yeah,
you
it
think it's
does.
dilutive? Okay.
No, I think it's dilutive of your time and your energy. You being
Yeah,
Frax,
that's
right?
exactly how Sam thinks. Like, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, and I think like, look, focus on like, look, correct me if I'm wrong, but how many people are like, can you call like Frax people? It was like 8, 10, something like that.
The core team is 8 people, all
Yeah.
Okay,
devs.
great.
Yeah.
So like those 8 people need to just keep doing on-chain Frax stuff, like blow it out, like do things that I can't even think of yet because like I'm just like reading what you guys are putting out and writing it on Twitter, right? Like keep doing that. Like what the way to like get to real world liquidity is to build an organization in which like someone like me who knows how to talk to bankers and like who can handle this stuff while builders are building can manage that. And like quite frankly, like you're not ready for that yet. Like you're not ready to have like Wall Street guys and Goldman types like in there like wheeling and dealing. Like you're too busy shipping, right? Like what I would propose is like the right way to address this bear market is to like keep building, but like focus on like corporatizing and professionalizing and like building yourself into the financial institution that we all know you're going to be in X years. Just like get ahead of it.
I guess what processes do you see like Frax needs to make in order to get to that level? And so, like it's important to still be on chain and stuff, but like, yeah, but like what processes do you see like should come about?
All right, so like just drawing on my experiences from the corporate world, and like I'm not saying that this is what Frax needs to do, but I'm saying like it's a direction. Is so like the business process was defined by like 3 independent but like Bible like documents, right? There's the 1 year plan, the 3 year plan, and then we had a stupid acronym, but let's call it the monthly report, right? So the 1 year plan is like the just everything you think about like budgeting, right? It's like real, like these are the dollars that we need, like based on the plans that we have. These are like the results that we expect to get based on these results we expect to get. This is the revenue, like, and they're like detailed projections in which like yeah, we'd like reformat them, but like that would be in quarterly reports to Wall Street, right? Like this is the plan for the year. Um, then 6 months later, we would do the 3 year plan, which is like much less about like budgetary numbers, but much more about like strategic vision, right? Like this is the it was consumer product goods, right? So like these are the products in the pipeline. This is how we're going to address this market. Like we see this competitor taking like doing this, like much more 3 year like high level stuff out. And like those would be like the whole team would be all hands on decks creating those documents. It would be done like 6 months off cycle so that like there was this kind of like constant attention on like this more like far out thinking, like 1 to 3 years, right? And like I think that's like an appropriate time frame for Frax. Like it probably was too short of a time frame for a consumer product goods company, right? But like I do think that like you need to dedicate some time and effort into thinking that far out, right? And then the third document is like the monthly reports, right? And that, like, as the director of FP&A, right, like that was my baby. And like it started with like just a real financial breakdown. Every brand or every business unit or whatever had their like 3 to 5 key performance indicators, or KPIs, as the TradFi people say, in which like people were expected to be able to like quote the target and like today's value off the top of their head. Like that's how like religiously the company was oriented towards those KPIs. And then so that would be like the first section, and then the second section would be like, this is like the program. It would be more like quantitative, qualitative, like that kind of split. And that would happen on like a monthly cycle, which I don't know if that's appropriate for Frax. We can talk about that, but we do it on a monthly cycle. Those would be internal documents. They wouldn't be seen by like anyone but internally to the company. But like that is how everybody on the team, whether it was like the data entry guy to the CEO, would like stay aligned to not only like what we're trying to do, but like how we're doing it. And then it was like the dance between these three documents that defined the business process. And like, that's where decisions were made. That's how bonuses were decided. Like that's everything. So if I were to make a proposal, it would basically be like, let's start with setting KPIs. Let's like, what are the like 3 to 5 things that like every person who cares about Frax should know what the target is, and like where we're at, right? And every AMA, every interview, everything that Sam does should be talking about, like, should be funneling back to these KPIs.
Have you thought about like what those metrics should be in terms?
No, not at all. I mean, like we could spitball right now, but I mean, it's not crazy stuff, right? It's like % locked as VEFXS. It's like amount of Frax in circulation. It's simple stuff.
Yeah.
On this line of KPIs, like how would you classify Frax's profitability? And through that same train of thought, the cash management of the protocol and the treasury itself.
Well, sorry, I guess I don't understand the question. I mean, like, I wouldn't do anything fancy. Like, profitability is profitability.
But how would you classify profitability, knowing how Frax's whole kind of AMO operation works and where the money comes in and what they spend on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like, this is part of like what formalizing a protocol into a business looks like, right? It's about like defining like each AMO, saying like these are like, this is the cost of doing business, COGS, right? Like this is the like amount of capital that we deploy into it. This is the amount of like liabilities we have against it. This is the profit it makes. Like it's it's work. I'm not saying it's not work, but it's just about like first defining that like bottom down, and then being able to report it and speak about it top down, I guess. I don't know. I start to get confused when I go back to TradFi speak.
No, makes sense.
It's been on chain for too long.
Yeah.
Yes.
You forget it on chain or on Twitter. I don't know.
Chain. What's the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to like roll it back to what you're talking about, bridging Frax to the real world, and Frax should remain on chain. And I agree, Frax should remain this permissionless, sovereign protocol in which the meat space world goes to for liquidity. It shouldn't be the other way around. And so in the future, like when that happens, because it inevitably will, like, how would you set up like the flow and process of that? Like for me personally, I imagine these BridgeFi entities being in the middle, with one foot on chain, like that have access to, a line of credit from Fraxland, and another in the real world, and they have like the proper KYC and whatnot, and the proper relationships with bankers, and can just deal with all the friction and BS of the real world. Like, how would you imagine it?
Yeah, I don't really see that as the future. I see that as the present, right? And like, okay. I think there's like some people that do it in like kind of weird ways, or like maybe shady ways. Like, for example, any institution that like just said like deposit your money and we'll farm Terra for you for 20%, like and it's a stable coin. And like, we've all heard the stories of like how like grandmothers got screwed on Terra because of that. But then there's like companies and protocols that are doing like really, really incredible things. And like, shout out to Maple Finance is one, but like another, like a special shout out to Goldfinch, who basically like provides a channel for liquidity from crypto into like lending into into emerging markets. And like, I mean, like that's incredible. Like they're taking our like degen money and like allowing like Jose to build a cell phone shop and like provide for his family. And I think like that's today, you know. I think the long-term vision of the future is that like there's the real world economy, and there's, well, today, right, there's the real economy, and then there's the financial economy. And we can talk about like how the divergence between the two is like the cause of a lot of the social unrest we see and a lot of like the crazy stuff going on. But like the future I see is there's going to be the real economy, the financial economy, and then the digital economy, right? And like those are all three independent things that are like very, very dependent on each other and have heavy links, whether it's through like individual institutions or like agreements or like billionaires play a role in this and like bridging the two. And so like I think that the future is just like messy and complicated, but like if you're asking me like the role that Frax has in that, I think like Frax conquers DeFi. Like I don't even necessarily think that means that Frax conquers the digital world. I think that Frax conquers DeFi, and like any financial transaction that happens in the digital world of like will touch Frax whether or not they know it. And in the same way that like TCP/IP has dominated internet messaging schemas, but like like 7 people on this podcast understood that acronym, and it doesn't matter, you know. Like that's the world I see in Frax, and like it's in front of us today because it's so young. But like I just never worry about grandma like having Frax.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just letting this sink in right now.
Let's again.
Huh. Okay. Okay. So now that you see Frax as such an integral part, but obviously Frax can't be the whole ecosystem. Who do you see as our, have symbiotic relationship with Frax, as whether a partnership, an alliance, or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, I have some like thought, like if you guys are looking for a business development person, I have some thoughts on like actual deals that can be made, but like starting at least from a high level, I think that like I think I, so like taking analogies from the real world, like Frax is the central bank, right? Let's call it the Fed, right? The U.S. central bank, and like the US central bank like controls the flow of money, but it doesn't like build these like crazy financial derivatives on top of it, right? Like, and fine, I'll spoiler alert. I'm gonna just like say dopex is like what who you guys should be partnering with, but like for in the real world we have firms like Citadel or like, yeah, I'm not going to list them. There's a lot of companies that like take the money that flows out of the central bank and like transforms it into ways that are like useful for the rest of the financial economy. And like some of that stuff is like not that great and like really just like exists to make like hedge fund managers more money. But like we have to remember like the point of finance is like to enable business to happen. And like that's important because like our society is so complex and like so crazy that like businesses have to like exist in order to take care of the logistics for us. And so like finance is important, like the derivatives and like options and hedging and like risk management and like all of this stuff is important. And like Frax should be like considering itself like the font from which money flows, and then looking for um, like interesting people that are going to like do stuff with that money. So again, dopex is like just to like take everything I had from like a high esoteric level and into like something concrete. Like they're doing options, like you can probably do some like interesting stuff on like straight up options, but like the real interesting thing today is in the interest rate options that they're doing. And I can kind of talk through like some ideas I've had around that. But the point is that like Frax should be like working with dopex to not only create like new interesting products that Frax will use, but also like seeding those products with a ton of liquidity and like making them used by the whole, setting the standards that the whole industry uses.
Can you actually go into those interest rate options? I want to like hear it further.
Yeah, sure. Well, I have a thread about this, so
Perfect. And we'll drop it in the show notes.
Yeah.
We'll drop it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like essentially, like the concept is so curve pools have like a variable yield, right? And the variable yield is like whatever the LP fee is, which actually I think is not part of this equation, but like specifically it's in the CRV emissions. And like it's variable because you don't know how many like votes that Gauge is going to get in Vodium. You don't know how many bribes it's going to get on pitch money. You don't know like how much like money is already going to be in the LP pool. And so like it's variable. And like what dopex interest rate options do is allow you to like place bets on where that variable yield is going to go, right? So like let's say it's at 2% and you think it's going to go up, you can buy a call option and like make money on that. And do you want to discuss like what options are?
I guess very briefly, if for people that don't know at home.
Okay. Yeah. Very briefly, like an option is a deal that you make with someone in which like you set the terms today for the deal in the future. And at the future, you look at the deal, and if it's still profitable, you get to like continue with the deal. And if it's not profitable, what you've done is bought the option to like walk away. Right. So using like that concept, right? The variable yield on a curve pool, let's say it's at 2% today, and you think it's going to go up to 3%. So you can buy an option for like 2.5%. And if it goes above that, then like you're going to be in the profit. But in the case where it actually like drops from 2% down to 1%, like because it's an option, you have the right to like say, I don't want to do the deal, like I'm out. So we'll stop there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, great explanation.
Yeah. So like the point is that like as Frax becomes like more and more dependent on curve pools, and like specifically like as the Frax develops a business process and a like business planning cycle that like accounts for the yield in the curve pools and like budgets based on that, like the problems become like what happens if your budgets are not correct, right? So like let's say again Frax is counting on a curve pool to be 2%, and then like for whatever reason, let's say like Tetranode colluded with like made friends with Mochi Finance, and then they like went and talked to
some weird alternative universe.
and for like 4 weeks they decided like we're gonna make the like pool C like the dopest biggest pool ever, like for whatever reason, right? Like in that case, like the yield on the Frax base pool might drop from like 2% to 0.5%. And the problem becomes like you were counting on that like incoming yield as part of like the next step in the business process. And then your choice becomes like, do I just like start falling behind my plan, or do I like go to a different part of my budget and rob someone else and like fill this, and then I'm just falling behind somewhere else? So what like I would be proposing, and like this is too early, like everything needs to be developed, but like these protocols should be developing it together, is like Frax to like build an option strategy that basically locks in whatever yield that they like need, that they're planning on each week. There's some upside, like they'll capture it, but like they'll be able to lock it in each week and like be in situations where there's this like Tetranode, Do Kwon, Mochi like freak show, like they'll still like the budget will be filled. It'll just be paid by the option.
Yeah. I know that Frax, there's an AMO that should be out pretty soon with Theta Nuts, which is another options protocol that's on multiple chains that could fill this void immediately once it comes out.
Yeah,
Um,
and I don't mean to like, you know, like
yeah,
dopex is doing some like incredible things, and like we can talk about them on their podcast, and
yeah,
like why I'm excited about them. But like the concept's the same, and I'm sure they didn't like. Sorry, I'm just not familiar, and I'm
hmm,
sure they're doing like incredible things too. And like, let's build the strategy. Like that's the
yeah,
point. And like I
yeah,
think Sam's ethos is like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like if any protocol wants to partner, like let's partner. And so like maybe the real answer to this is like, well, do option strategies on both.
yeah. No, do it wherever there are option strategies, whether it's Theta Nuts, dopex, somewhere else. Like bring them everywhere. You were talking about another thing I want to go to. You were talking about curve emissions, and that like playing into like Frax's
Mhm.
future budgeting and this and that. Um, a big like question and kind of like argument and just going around is like, are curve emissions sustainable? And I kind of view like curve emissions as like the bootstrap to like curve fees. And the difference between like curve and Uniswap is like curve LPing is very passive, while Uniswap LP is much more active. So do you see like do you see curve emissions as sustainable, and do you see a future where like the fees can like actually make up for like the drop in emissions, or do you think like this is like a strategy for now, but like in the future Frax should prepare to like shift its strategy?
Yeah. Honestly, like due to the recent like conversations, I like started to actually look at what curve fees are, and like, oh my god, like they're not that impressive, at least on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Like on a, if you annualize it, like correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's something like $70 million a year on like a $400 million valuation is like, I mean, in the real world, like that like would be a no brainer buy. So I do think that I think it's like a good question. It's a thought, like it is definitely a question worth asking. I think like taking a step back, like and one of the reasons I'm like all in on crypto is because I believe in the like kind of Pareto principle of like value accrual, which is not a human sentence. Which like, so the Pareto principle is like essentially like 80% of like the activity or the value is in like 20% of the like people or like whatever, right? And so like what I think it's the way finance works is that like liquidity or value or like whatever you want to call it, like it pools in like specific places, like because those places have characteristics that or whatever, but like it pools there because other capital pools there. And like what's important is like the deepest of deep liquidity. And like, you know, zooming to back to World War II, right? Like the Europe is shattered. Like there's nobody on earth that has like any military except for the US who like could in the blink of an eye like just become world dictators. And like why didn't that happen? It was like because we took the important thing, which was like what Great Britain had, which was the reserve currency of the world, the pound sterling, right? Like we took it first in dollars and then like blah 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 blah, and like what it's in today is in US treasuries. And like that is like the deepest like most liquid market in the world, and like quite frankly it's the only market in the world that like that any transaction of real size like will happen on, because like for a lot of reasons, but it's like the only thing that has like the trust and the liquidity to like to allow people to have confidence to just like hold it for like billions and billions and billions of dollars. And so I think that like when I see curve and when I see the flywheel, like what I see is like liquidity, like the deepest of deep liquidity that already exists today, like locking itself further and further in, and like characterize it however you want, right? But like one of the effects of this is that like nobody is more bought into the curve ecosystem than Frax, a stablecoin issuer, right? Like, and so like moving forward, like why I'm bullish on Curve is like, yeah, the math and the numbers, and like we can talk about that, but like it's the flywheel of Curve, Convex, and now the central bank stablecoin issuer deploying Frax base pool as like part of its core strategy, in which like it's dedicating like obscene amounts of money to future bribe. Like, I believe in Lindy, and I believe in like liquidity and depth for liquidity and depth's sake. And like, I think that's what we're trying to build. And like, I think it's easy to be like, well, it's not going to work, but like, get out of crypto.
It's easy to be a hater for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. Liquidity bequests liquidity.
Yeah.
And like once it like, is there and like piles up over a long period of time, which is why I think like Curve and Frax's VE locks are so long. Then it
And
kind of just
ETH,
stays there. Yeah.
right?
Oh,
By the way, like ETH,
and
right? Like
ETH.
that,
Yeah.
everything will settle to ETH. And
Yeah.
like, I believe in a multi-chain future. It's just like, it's L2s, right? It's Arbitrum. Like Solana will be around. It'll just settle to ETH, right? Like ETH is like the deepest, most trusted, like most functional, like liquidity. And like, it'll be 80%. And then there'll be like some corporate chains, like a Solana, like, I don't know, I'm sure like Russia will have their own like forced Russia chain. And sorry, that's probably like a China comment more than Russia. I don't know. Anyway, point is like that, like liquidity, like value, like wealth is gravity, and like wealth attracts more wealth, and like that's how you explain billionaires. That's how you explain like U.S. Treasury economy, like market. That's how you explain. That's how you explain the way the world works.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I want to go back to the whole Curve emissions, because right now the Curve AMO is the most profitable AMO for Frax. And specifically, that's kind of a misnomer because it's really the Convex AMO, right?
Yeah.
And now we know Curve is going to keep on inflating forever for like 300 years, decreasing 15% every year in August. Now, for Convex, on the other hand, though, like they are on a much, much shorter emission schedule. And, from my calculations, like they're pretty much going to be all bought out, or rather all fully emitted around like 4.5 years. But
Yeah.
after year 3, it's like meaningfully depleted. Like
Yeah.
95% of it is gone or so.
Yeah.
So with that kind of coming up, like sooner than later, like Frax is legitimately going to lose out on 50% of its top line revenue, because Convex accounts for 50% of its APR that's kind of advertised. So it's like, that worries me. That's what keeps me up, right? And once that is gone, you said liquidity begets liquidity. Well, then I guess almost the reverse is true, is where like as liquidity fled, like, so would more liquidity fly away? And that's what keeps me up at night. It's like, is this Frax flywheel sustainable? This bear market is a great test of it, to see if, how many people still stick around. Right? Yeah. I remember at the peak, the Frax 3CRV pool was like 2.8 billion, earning like 7% APR. Like that is like crazy, right? Yeah. You're absolutely right. If you're of any size and you want to earn 7%, that's the pool you go to. Period.
Yeah. No, that's like a super fair point, and like you laid it out in a way that's like definitely sobering. What I would say to that is one of our mutual friends said something extremely poignant to me, and I'll repeat it to you, which is like, Convex is so stupid. They spend all of their CVX on Curve. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, they can't, what are they going to, like, how are they going to acquire FXS, and how are they going to acquire the next token? Mm-hmm. And so like, I love Convex, like C2PT, please. Like, I'm sorry, you're not stupid, but oh Lord, Convex is like, has pigeonholed themselves to be like Curve maxi, and like, it is what it is. And mm-hmm. I think that that creates opportunity for like somebody else to fill in that 50% like hole that you're looking at like 2 years down the line. Like, are you kidding me? Like, goddamn, we're going to be 60 by then.
16 crypto years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's just like,
Yeah, so back a bit. Let's talk about the Frax space pool because it's in discussion right now, and it's looking promising that it will pass. And I feel like if and when it passes, like it's going to be a huge deal. And just because you look at USDC, which is the official on-off ramp into DeFi right now from the real world, and Frax, which is this completely on-chain ethos stablecoin, and like just having that dichotomy in a base meta pool where anybody can like go to and get liquidity from, I think is super powerful. So what are your thoughts on the Frax space pool?
Yeah, well, okay. Can I start with just like the thing that's most frustrating to me about the conversation about it?
Yeah.
Like, if you guys have trusted in like the Frax team and like Sam up to this point, like, do you really think he doesn't understand how like curve governance like proposals work? Like, I just feel like so many people are like talking about like Sam, we saw the like forum post, but like you have to put it to vote, and it's like, no, man, like he's talking to him, like
Yeah, no,
play the pool, like there's
I'm pretty
technology
sure he
to like,
talks to them every day. I'm
like
sure
come
there's,
on,
Yeah.
man,
yeah.
like so, like can we all just like take a step back, like let's evaluate the proposal on its face and like trust that the guys who like need to make it happen are making it happen.
Yeah.
So soapbox down, but right. I think, look, like I think it's a huge deal, and I think that like from a like holistic sense, like what we should like understand it is Frax fusing itself to like the convex curve flywheel. And I think that like the practical effects are like if you're any token, it like the decision to pair against like what you're going to pair your liquidity against, it's going to be like you can go ETH, which makes a lot of sense and will still make a lot of sense. You can go like some other random thing that we're not even going to talk about, or you can go stablecoin, right? And the choice for stablecoin is like anything else that has its own like risks and security properties and like whatever, right? Or Frax, which will pay bribes for you on Vodium to incentivize other people to put liquidity into your pool. Like like full stop.
It's no brainer.
Yeah, like and I think like we can work out the math. Like the math is important, and like we need to understand like where the cash flows are coming from and like what the numbers will look like and whatever. But like at a conceptual level, like this is about like and this is what I'm talking about, like about Frax taking over DeFi, right? Like this is a DeFi move where like what we're saying is that like if you want to create liquidity on DeFi, you can have what the TradFi choice, which is USDC. You can have whatever like degen choice, or you can have like the DeFi Gold Standard, and like we'll pay your bribes for you. And like not only will you pay your bribes for you, like you're gonna have direct integrations into like all of this other like amazing suite of products that we have.
The DeFi Gold
Yeah.
Standard.
Yeah.
That's
No,
gonna be branded in my head.
I remember Dave said this like so succinctly on the last pod of like, every stable coin kind of has like their little niche of the stable coin market,
Yeah.
where Tether is like the centralized exchange's de facto pair. Then we have USDC as the on off ramp. And then we have like Frax to really own the on chain DeFi world, right? And but we only talk about Frax, but there's also this other three-letter stablecoin that is also on this decentralized market. I would love to get your thoughts on some DAI here.
Yeah, I mean, look, like if you want to talk about a stable coin that should be thinking about real world lending, it's DAI, right? Like 10 billion is like a different scale than Frax is. And like DAI's at a different point in their like life cycle, and like all of crypto, like the whole point of everything that we're doing is that we start like so young and energetic, and like we move fast and we break things, and like the DAO, like that was crazy. That was so crazy. And like then over time, like things ossify and things like become more and more stuck in their permanent ways. And the idea is that like we are creating something for like the infinity generations from now, right? And so I think DAI is like further along in that process than Frax is, and I think they've done a lot of great things and they should be respected for it. And you know, like they're not playing they don't care about the curve wars. Like, I'll just say that. And I don't think that that's necessarily a losing strategy for them. Like, they have the PSM, they could turn that
Yeah.
into like a real AMM and then just like take half of their DAI and half of their collateral and put it in, and then like they're going to be just as liquid as anything in curve.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're playing a different game. And were you listening to Sam's interview yesterday with
No,
DCF
yeah,
God?
that's where that came from. I caught like I had to jump in and out, so I caught like
Yeah.
20 minutes of it. But yeah,
No. He explained. It's just I think it's just different strategies
Hmm.
to just like go about functioning
yeah,
and
and like
operating in
again,
DeFi. Yeah.
like the beauty of being like in this space that like we all believe is going to conquer the world and like grow so much from here is that like we can all think so positive sum, and like DAI can do its thing and like maybe become $1 trillion stablecoin, and Frax can do a thing and maybe become $1 trillion stablecoin, and like that's 2 trillion. Like that's like not enough to run an economy in the real world. Like we're talking so much more than that. So like let's embrace it. Like again, I believe in the curve wars, but I think that's like DeFi native. I think that's degen shit. Like let's all be real. Like Tetranode, one guy who like I, I don't even know how to describe him. Look at him on Twitter. But one guy is like making decisions around PUSD, and like he's talking a bigger game than like he's actually playing a role in it. But like maybe that's not where DAI wants to be, and like that's okay.
Yeah.
Mm, okay. And then this is the last question for me. We have here, who do you think are, some frenemies of Fraxis? Because now that we're in this, all stable coins have a space and they all could all live harmoniously together. But are there any other DAOs or player in the space where you could see as, could be friends to Frax, but could also turn on a dime to be frenemies?
Okay. I don't like to. So okay, for I'm not going to do like any specific protocols,
Yeah, yeah,
but like categories, right? I think
yeah.
it's like other stablecoins, DAI included, it like should be considered frenemies, if you will. Like, and I think that it's not from a standpoint of like there is a finite amount of liquidity, and if like DAI is taking, I said I wouldn't name names. If DAI is taking some, that means that Frax can't take some. Like that's not what I believe at all. But like what I do believe is that stable coins that do things that are incredibly irresponsible and cost people lots of money might have implications on like what responsible protocols like Frax are doing. And so I think that like some like okay whatever for stablecoins I'll name names. For like Four is like a very good example of a dodge bullet, because like not only like was that our capital at stake had that gone through, and we can talk about how possible it was if it had gone through, but like the closer that Frax integrated with Terra, like the more Frax's reputation integrated with Terra, right? And like I know I'm sitting here saying like we need to like worry about we need to like worry just about like on chain and within DeFi, but like the reality is like we do need to think ahead to that future in which like we conquer the world, and like we're still at a point where we can get snuffed out, and we're still at a point where like bad reputation can like snuff like a terrible idea, and so like reputation management is important, and so like um, that's what I worry about in terms of stable coins. In terms like another thing I would like put into the frenemies category is regulators. Like anyone that thinks that like regulation is bad like is not worth listening to. Like we all need regulation, we should all embrace and welcome regulation, we just need to be part of the conversation, right? Like the a world in which like JP Morgan or CPG company or like grandma turns to DeFi does not exist without regulation, right? Like we want it to come, we just need to be like helping write it, because like otherwise it's going to be like old cranky people like Elizabeth Warren who like doesn't even understand what we're doing, and like they're just going to like try to ban it, and like the result of that is that it's all going to move to like Singapore and continue to happen. And like, let's be real, the three of us are going to move to Singapore too. And like it'll still happen, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think what my old bosses used to say, that like in every negotiation, if like you need to have a seat at the table. If you don't have a seat at the table, that means you're on the menu. And
Ooh.
you know, like one of the real like problems with Frax not being like a real like company and a corporation yet is that like Sam's not in Washington right now. Like he should like, I love that he's like sitting here talking to us about like vision and timeline and blah blah blah, but like he needs to be in Congress. He needs to be like in hearings. Like the stablecoin regulation's coming because of what just happened with Luna, and like we need to be at the table, you know.
So yeah, so let's say if like Sam or someone else would go to Washington right now and talk to regulators and congressmen, like what is like the best way to go about that? What's the proper tone to talk to regulators? Like how do you get regulators to listen, and how do you speak their language?
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of like, so the beautiful thing about America is that like we professionalize everything, right? And like this is just called lobbying, right? It's like not like a novel thing. Like there's firms that do it, there's way to do it. Like we just got to get serious about it. And like I was the cash manager during in 2017 when the Trump tax cuts came, and for anyone that wasn't paying attention, that had like such major implications on everyone's, but especially businesses' taxes. And so I didn't do any lobbying, but like I watched how it's done, and I like fed them the numbers, and at the very least, like that's what Sam needs to be doing. And like it's not like you guys can't afford it. So, you know, like I don't have answers, but like I know that this is what we need to be focusing on, and you know, it's up to like Frax to step up. No one's going to call you up.
Yeah. Goes back to numbers, go back to metrics.
Yeah.
So
Well, you gotta sell the metrics, right?
yeah.
And like I think that like something that crypto really doesn't understand, like with the always be shipping mentality, which like I really believe in and like really respect and admire, is like a real lack of acknowledgement that like narrative matters, and like we're humans, the way we understand things is in stories, and like we need to like put energy into helping people understand like what's happening here, you know, like the curve wars, right? It's not like some like smart looking kid named Sam like bribing some like weirdo like bunny named Tetranode over like, you know, like that's not what's happening. And like we need to help people understand that.
Yeah.
And part of that is helping Congress understand that.
Yeah, we need better storytellers. Or not better, but like more
We
storytellers.
need to put energy into storytelling.
Yeah. Like we put energy into shipping, put energy into storytelling. So always be shipping, always be always be storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the ethos of Fraximillas, right? We are going to be that voice or that avenue for Frax to kind of speak out and have these kind of conversations and push these kinds of efforts, you know, so to kind of drive Frax forward um, into the Frax that we all envisioned in our mind for the years to come. But I mean, I wanted to ask you more about like you said multi-chain future earlier, and Frax is obviously only on ETH. And do
Oh no,
you
it's
see
not.
Frax?
It's on like 14
Oh,
different
right,
chains.
it's on a bunch of different chains. But the
Yeah.
main product
Actually,
of like Frax
we could
Lend,
turn to a thread. I can tell you where the liquidity is.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Frax is literally across every freaking chain, the token itself. But I mean, like more on each of their products, like the
Mhm.
Frax Lend, Frax Swap, Frax Stake, like all of it is really, really on ETH. Like, how do you
Mhm.
see that fit in a multi-chain future?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think that like there's anything like that complicated about it. I think you just follow TVL and you follow like where the market needs. You know, like I think like we're all watching like Arbitrum become like something special and like become like a place where programmable money like can actually be explored, because like we can't on ETH, no one can afford the gas. So I think like as that ecosystem develops, like, you know, Frax should have like a dedicated Arbitrum person to like understand like where, like who are the biggest protocols, what are their needs, like how can like Frax not only provide liquidity into like their solutions, but help like build and like decide those solutions and like make sure that they're Frax centric and like Frax aligned. And so I think follow TVL and like follow
Yeah.
both like where you can inject your Frax and follow also where DeFi is deciding to like deposit its value.
Yeah, I mean, Arbitrum right now would be, the best affordable solution, but something I see in the future, really taking off is just ZK rollups, and especially with Starknet. I could see Frax I know Frax, like when Starknet like launches fully, like it's going to be on that chain, and I could see Starknet becoming the layer for like Frax interactions. Um, but I'm curious, like, what you think of ZK rollups in general, and like, should Frax be thinking that ahead, or should Frax just be like focusing, oh, we should just go to Arbitrum right now?
Okay, man. Like, here I'm gonna do like a little 1 minute thing. You guys decide if it's too off topic or not. But so like, how do I put this? All right. So I'm going to answer your question with a story that's way too long, right? But bear with me, right? So like Bitcoin, right? Like what is it? Right? Like how do you tell your parents about it? Like I don't know, store of value, like all this shit, right? But like really what it is it's a computer program where you can like it has account balances and you can do positives and minuses, right? And like the real innovation is that we figured out how to progress that computer program by passing it around to like untrusted, like totally random computers, and like all have trust that that program is sound, right? So what is Ethereum? Like Ethereum is like the recognition that that computer program like doesn't just have to be like account plus minus, right? Like it can be anything, like literally anything that your MacBook can do. Like that's what Turing complete means. And like, yeah, we're in this like stage now where like it's one block every 10 seconds and the gas fee is like $200 to buy like a sticker. And like, you know, it's so stupid, but like, the vision is that like it can run your MacBook like by like passing it around to these random computers. And so like the next phase of that is like how do you like keep the properties that are cool about passing it around while like just like juicing the execution layer, right? And so like we have Arbitrum today and like it is what it is, but like ZK rollups, man, like ZK rollups are the world computer. And like the thing that has me juiced about Ethereum is it was a podcast on Bankless in like November where the Starknet guys came on,
Ooh,
and
I watched
it
that one
was like a
too.
one offhand comment, and I was just like my jaw's still on the floor. But he made this comment where he's like, "We have a guy today who's running protein folding calculations on chain on Starknet," and it was just like, and like for anyone who's just like isn't a computer science nerd, like protein folding calculations like the most like complicated difficult thing that like scientists still haven't figured out, and once we figure it out we'll like be able to solve cancer and blah blah blah, all that stuff. But like on chain, like they're doing it on chain, like that's the world computer. And so like when I look at like this world that's like crashing down around us, and like there's like no coordination, and like we're like looking for solutions, and like I see Ethereum and like the solutions that we're building on top of it as like that's where generalized AI comes from. That's where universal basic income comes from. That's where like coordination past nation states comes from. And so like when I to answer your one question, in which I just went on a giant tangent about like what I think about ZK rollups is like it is like a gargantuan leap forward in terms of the tech that like only makes me more like passionate about like the future that like Ethereum could be.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's cut that
Uh,
up, put it in the package, wrap it, bow it.
Yeah.
yeah. I concur. Like I share the same sentiment, but like to like hear it in those words, like you put it perfectly.
No, yeah, man, I'm a believer. I'm a believer.
Yeah.
These give me some chills. I love it. I love it. All right. So normally the way we kind of wrap up all these podcasts is we do a series of lightning questions. So I'm gonna start with the first one. And what was your first virgin crypto experience? When did you first touch the chain?
Oh man. So I had before I even believed in any of this stuff, I had a friend who bought me like an NFT for my birthday. I think he paid like $300, 250 on gas. And then by the time he got it to me, it was
Makes
like worth
sense.
$100. And like, honestly, I still don't get NFTs.
Yes. So, next question. What is your most regrettable purchase?
Okay. As you can tell, I hate like dropping names, but I will say that like Klima DAO was my most regrettable purchase. And like, man, I really believed in the vision, and I still do. And the lesson I learned from that is that like being too early is just as wrong as being too late, or being wrong. And also, I learned that people don't really understand ohm forks, and I'm a believer in what ohm is doing, but that was not a good narrative shift.
All right. Aside from Frax, any other projects you're excited about?
Oh man, so many. But if I like had to pick one to shout out, I'll say
Mhm.
Umami Finance on Arbitrum. Like they do some like really cool and dynamic and interesting and complex what do they call it, delta neutral strategies, where it's like basically farming USDC without exposure to like even ETH, like so you don't have to worry about your investment. Very cool. Like go talk to Crypto Condom on Twitter. He's a big fan, or their Discord's amazing. But the real reason I'm a believer is they are setting up a LLC like in the real world to like take in like business invest business investment and like deploy it into DeFi. And so, like, again, I think that's doing the Lord's work. I think like they have like a really compelling story. Like, I've seen that like they're professional people that are working on professional documents, and like they're at a stage where they're ready to talk to TradFi. And so, shout out to Umami, and Frax should start talking to Umami.
Yes, I concur. So, what do you like to do when you're away from the screen? What do you like to do when you're off chain?
I run a lot. I run a 10K every day,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, yeah, and run 10K every day, and like I travel like a lot.
So, can you leak some alpha about Frax?
Yeah. All right. So I am like, if you've listened this far on the conversation, this isn't really alpha because we've already discussed it, but like Frax BP is huge, like so enormous, and like changing to like how we're going to understand crypto and how DAOs are going to understand liquidity. And like, the proposal was put out like 2 weeks ago, and people don't understand like just how transformative this will be, and like how it takes everything that's awesome about the curve and convex flywheel and like supercharges it. I mean, this is like turbocharging the Ferrari, right? And so I think like everyone like needs to learn about Frax Base Pool. Like it's in like governance right now, so like everyone needs to learn about it and evangelize it and like convince whales to vote for it. And Frax is doing, I'm sorry, Frax, Sam is like doing the right thing. He's talking to the right people. He's like doing what needs to be done in the back channels. But all I have to say is like get hyped and like talk about it.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, Pam, it's been a lot of fun. This has been an awesome conversation. I've learned a lot, and I cannot wait to see what you do in the future. I cannot wait for your future threads, and I'm sure we're going to be hearing a lot more of you in the months and years to come.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. And, I just appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. Like I feel like I'm like we're talking about like Chase JP Morgan, like while JP Morgan's like in high school. This is incredible. And like, I'm just excited to be along for the journey, and excited to see what you guys do next.
Yeah, man. We honestly can't wait to have you back on and do a whole recap of what has happened. So I'm looking forward to ham number 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's ham it up.
ham it up.
Yes.
All right.
Cool. All right.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Have a good one.
Wow, that was a really fun one. Thanks, Haym, for coming on. Yeah, need to take a deep breath there. But episode number 2, we have the Flywheel going on the Flywheel podcast. So we're going to keep bringing these every Thursday. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter and our Telegram channel @Flywheelpod, and we're just going to keep this going.